once I got that taste that, oh, okay, right now this makes me feel better. Right now, I feel like I'm worthless. Right now, I don't feel like I'm a disgusting disgrace. In that relapse was one seltzer turned into a gallon of vodka in about 72 hours. Once my eyes opened and I saw exactly my role in it, and I stopped the pity party. We're going to call it out exactly what it is. You can only feel bad for yourself for so long.
No one is actually going to take away this safety blanket from us. You've become so intolerant to feeling those emotions because all you have done up until this point is either suppress them or numb them.
Because when you're drinking, everything's in black and white. And then you get sober and life turns into technicolor. Good, bad, and the ugly. I'm not made for color TV yet. I'm not prepared for this. I was never afraid to die. Never been afraid to die, but I was terrified to live.
There are going to be individuals where this is going to feel like a breath of fresh air. I actually do have something within my capacity I can do to change things for myself, because up until this point, I didn't believe that I did. Welcome to the Self-Reflections podcast, where real reflections are shared by real people. Today on the Self-Reflections podcast, we have Sarah Shaffer from Philadelphia in the US. With over 25 years as a social worker and her own deeply moving life journey, she empowers women to break free from self-doubt and navigate trauma, addiction, and caregiving. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Klaudia. It is great to be here. I'm so excited.
Me too. Let's dive into your incredible story and the powerful work that you do today. You've spoken in our discovery call about experiencing complex family dynamics and childhood trauma growing up. Can you share how these early life experiences shaped your sense of worth, your identity growing up, and how that impacted you?
Absolutely. I was brought up by my father was an Orthodox Jew. My mother was an agnostic Episcopalian. And, we were brought up Unitarian, but all of their past histories, clearly determined, the type of people that they were. And my father was my abuser. And that's something that I came to it comes to light because trauma, we bury everything down. And so it was about 48, and we'll get to that after the good long stint of alcoholism. But, large family, they brought in, every stray child they could find with an existing family of 2 girls. And that just was a recipe for disaster in and of itself. And you learn your survival skills, your fight, flight, and freeze in those very forming years. And when she's put to be on fire all the time, you don't know which way is coming. And you continue to live your life like that. And you start to make your decisions like that. And when it's not reframed and reshifted, those survival skills as we get older and determine what is useful and what is not, then those primitive survival skills don't serve us anymore, and we need to reevaluate them, because we're certainly not the same people as we were as children and midlife and so on. So, I always had to fend for myself, always had to be independent, because I was the youngest out of 10 of these kids, and constantly at that point thinking that I was not good enough, that there was something wrong with me, that there was, because one, what my father had done to me, and then you're bringing in all these other kids. Like, why aren't we good enough? And outside, it looked like they're saving everybody. They're bringing all of these stray dogs in, and aren't they just wonderful people? And he's the cantor at synagogue, and don't we just all revel in these high level people? And so that progressed into, a long stint of alcoholism. and many other things along with it. But alcohol was definitely the key choice. And it was all because everything you've got, we're all products of our childhood. That is indisputable. Don't need a doctor or a scientist to tell us that.
Yeah.
And as women, particularly, what do? We shove everything in, just kind of like the lovely Spanx. And we're like, oh, it's all going to just disappear. And it doesn't.
I love that analogy.
It bubbles out you got back fat, you got, half your boobs hanging out. It's a mess. It's a mess. And we were taught, do that and you'll look better. And for a lot of women, it's about looking great on the outside. I went to, high universities, had high level jobs, have been a social worker for 20 years, and within the midst of my son's rare disease and stem cell transplant, I developed a foundation and a cord. I mean, I was doing it all, and I was drinking every second of it.
When did you first start using alcohol as a coping mechanism?
As a coping mechanism, I would say college. I didn't drink through high school, which was really funny. I think because there was so much drugs and stuff that were going on in the house, at that moment I was like, no, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be that crazy. My parents weren't drinkers. That was, I grew up with all the crazy, drug deals and busts and all that stuff around. But it didn't surround me. And I think once I got that taste that, okay, right now this makes me feel better. Right now I don't feel like I'm worthless. Right now I don't feel like I'm a disgusting disgrace. Yeah. And what the perpetual system does is then you need more. Obviously, you need more. And we are believing that it's made us feel better. And in the midst of it, we're destroying everything around us. Tasmanian devil, our careers, our family, our children, without the intention to do so. But we got to own what we've done. We can't just brush off. I like to say that, have you ever watched Grey's Anatomy?
Oh, only bits of it, but I was never a fan.
But okay, so the premise is that this woman, Meredith Grey, has just one rolling dumpster fire after another. I mean, her arm falls off and planes fall out of the sky, and I mean, it just doesn't matter. And so I like to say that my life is 11 shades of Meredith Grey. It was just like every corner you turned around, there was the next dumpster fire. And, I think it just got to the point that I was like, oh, I just can't do this anymore, And you have to learn to adapt. And so I was adapting, but in a very self-destructive way.
And I want to normalize that when we are young and there's childhood trauma, especially, in an environment where we feel invalidated, not enough, and we have to engage in just creating this facade of coping. Initially, it starts off with just pretending to be versions of ourselves that we're not, disconnecting or avoiding, dissociating at times. And then later, as we get access to other means and methods, we then up the ante, like you said, whether it's drugs and alcohol, gambling, sex, promiscuity, you name it, we can choose anything as a means of our drug to take us away from the disgust, which is one of the words that you used. And I loved that you identified how significant it can be, how raw it can actually be of the experience of how we then, not only what we believe about ourselves, but how we feel about ourselves.
And it's one of the methods that I teach, but the biggest one is looking yourself in the eyes. We are the only people we're going out of this world with. It's just me. And if I couldn't look myself in the eye, I was driving with my children drunk. I had alcohol hidden everywhere. My young children knew where it was hidden. They would come and find it. The straw that broke the camel's back, finally, after one round of rehab and coming out into COVID and only lasting about 3 months. And I went in that relapse was one seltzer turned into a gallon of vodka in about 72 hours. And because once you're back, you're like, oh, yep, I'm all in. And so I picked my son up he had swam the mile and he was extremely thirsty and got in the car, and I handed him what I thought was a bottle of water. And it was vodka. It was straight vodka. And he took 3 huge gulps from it. And he looked right at me and he said, "It's fucking vodka, you fucking drunk." And I then proceeded to beg him not to call and tell on me to my husband. And as a mom, we don't get much lower than that.
Yeah.
You know, without the physical bruising, without that, you don't get much lower than that. And so, you know, I got on a plane and I went out to Betty Ford out in California. I needed to just get out of Dodge. And it was the first time that I had said out loud that my father was the one who abused me, because I had been dreaming. You know how that man, your body and your brain know when you're ready to handle something like that. And what people, you know, when you talk about trauma stories and people are like, oh, that's so sad, you know, everybody can really imagine a child getting sick. You can imagine needing some massive medical issue. You can even imagine death, right? You can't imagine your parent being the one that abuses you. You can imagine an uncle, a cousin, whatever, random stranger.
Yeah.
Parent is a different ball of wax, and it's not to diminish anything else, but it is a different ball of wax. And you feel that you cannot talk about it because it makes everybody so uncomfortable because they can't imagine it. But the problem here is that I'm not unique.
No. And that's the sad realization, right?
Sad thing. And that is one of my biggest goals in life, is to let other women know I'm not unique. I don't have this rock star story. I check a lot of boxes, got a big laundry list, but I'm not the only one. And there's too many of us out there that need to be able to acknowledge, I'll never get my day in the ring. So I had to figure out how to live with that too. And not, and that's about the clearing the brain, that verbal vomit. Get it out. It doesn't matter how crazy or how, you know, whatever it is, find somebody, whoever, to just say it out loud. It was my counselor. Now, his response, which was what I needed in this is how I do my coaching, is the acceptance. Every time I would go in and I'd be like, oh, my father and my towers fell and my son was sick and blah. And he would slap this card that was a page 417 out of the big book of AA that was on acceptance. And it said, life on life's terms. And if there's something that you don't like, you better turn that little mirror around and look at your role in it. So every time I went in there bawling, he would stop that card down. But because the deep therapy, we'll get to that stuff, but when we're stuck, when we're in that and we cannot get out, it is a do or die moment. This is you're not at a point that we're going to coddle and, oh, woe is you, because we've done that I was 48 when I've done it for 48 years. I don't need to be coddled. I need someone to be like, okay, this is where it is. It ain't changing. And what do you want to do? And it's that simple. We need so much more.
Because we want to separate, right, the trauma that happened previously to then the trauma we put ourselves through as well. There's like this dual responsibility, I think, that you're highlighting there. And you were at a point in your life where it was, yes, we're not minimizing what had occurred, but you had a part to play in how damaging the behavior was to you that needed that kind of slap in the face and that
Exactly.
confrontational approach.
Yes. And I didn't take it as confrontational. It was funny because I was ready.
Yes.
You know what I mean? If someone's not ready to do this, it doesn't matter
You
how
wouldn't.
you talk
No.
to them about it. It just doesn't matter. And, so that acceptance and that accountability, and to your point, no, I'm not responsible for what happened to me, what happened around me, what happened to my child. I'm not responsible for those things. Every single thing I did, I am.
Yeah.
Without doubt. And the freedom that comes with owning that, sitting down with my children. I was repeating that cycle. I was keeping that going, not in the same manner, not with the same actions, but the same feelings, the same emotions, all of that stuff. Mommy, why do you need to drink yourself into an oblivion? What's the matter with me? Why am I not enough? And
so the same narratives just perpetuated.
Yep. And that 150 million% was a driving force. Once my eyes opened and I saw exactly my role in it, and I stopped the pity party. We're going to call it out exactly what it is. You can only feel bad for yourself for so long. And so I brought my children, everything. I put everything out on everything I did to them. Tell me what I did to you. Tell me how it made you feel. Tell me that experience. And it continues, and they're 19 and 16, not regularly, but they'll say, hey, you know what? That really messed me up. Oh, I know. Let's talk about it. What's going on? Because you're not going to be 30 spending your money and your time sitting in a therapist's office. We're not doing that. So it's really that get to the core, and it's what my kids have learned. With my son, he had a rare disease which required a stem cell transplant, which left him blind and left him missing teeth, and now we have type 1 diabetes. Where the hell is that kid gonna freaking turn? No, you got to look at it. This is what we're dealt. We do not have a choice in this. We don't have control in this, but we have a control in how we respond to it. You
Absolutely.
can be about it and not take care of your sugars and not do anything like that, and we'll deal with the repercussions of that. Or we can just put the hard work in, do it, and guess what his choice is? To put that hard work in. He counts every carb, does all of his insulin, because of his vision, I draw the insulin up. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just going to be 16 years old. He's an honor student. He's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And there's, even from the initial rare disease, there's no way this kid should even look anything like this. And he is. And then you got the brother, the older brother, who was 3 when all of this started to go down. We tend as parents, it's not forget, but it's like, how do you divide? And then and you can't. It is very difficult, and we have to call that out and give ourselves grace for that too. We do the best. My husband's family was wonderful. His parents came, they took care of him. He wasn't neglected,
Yeah.
But addressing the things when they can verbalize it, like now, okay, that was really hard for you.
That's important.
But I said to him, you have to remember that we did the best that we could. Yeah, I get your stuff. But try and realize what anger you're holding on to. And what were the intentions.
And I know that you've already shared a little bit about how the alcohol, or what behaviors the alcohol led to, and to help our community connect to normalize some of their behaviors. You mentioned there was, putting your kids in danger by drinking and driving. There was, choices that probably led to lying, or, that I know you highlighted to me during our discovery call. Can you give us an outline of what behaviors were occurring because of your alcohol use, and how was that actually impacting your family at the time?
Well, I absolutely can. first and foremost, I wasn't present. You can't be present. But to your point, drinking and driving, emotional, unregulated outbursts, lying constantly, hiding. I lost 2 jobs because of it. A 15-year career at United Healthcare, gone instantly because I was drinking at a vendor and was clearly behaving very inappropriately. So, you know, those are the choice. I made the choice to drink at the event. So I can't blame drinking for my actions. You know what I mean? And when I got sober, and the decision that there is not a person, a situation that makes me drink. And once I started to accept this, it's my brain that makes my arm reach out, pick up whatever it is, bring it to my lips, and swallow. And I have a choice in those moments. And not making a choice was a choice. And so the not present, I think, is one of the biggest ones. The dangerous behaviors, certainly before even my kids, promiscuous behaviors, sleeping with numerous people that I don't even know. And, where we're not making those good choices, we put ourselves in such dangerous situations that are not our fault, but for the love of God, that first drink gave us that access. And, it's a really, like I said, my son is 19, so I hone in on all these girls. He's a swimmer, the swim team. Do not leave your drink unattended. Do not drink to where you have no idea what's going on. Don't be anywhere by yourself. Like the primate survival skills. And when you are very, I don't want to say shattered, but lots of cracks in the porcelain, you don't care. You're like, it's already damaged. What the hell do I give a shit? And that would always happen every time I would drink. I would sit down. It would be 3:00 in the morning, gallon of vodka in between my feet, going, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And every single time I did it. And then once you've done it, you're like, well, Band-Aid's off. Might as well have a party. And it's a hot, hot mess. And nothing good comes from it.
In the moment, you were trying to guide yourself whether to do it or not to do it. And it's so hard when you're, because it's such an isolating experience too. Like you mentioned as well, it's something that you hid to a certain point, you lied about to a certain point until you could. And of course, it grew so big that you just can't hide it from anyone, no matter what your attempts were. But, it's such an isolating experience that you don't have anyone there that's actually going to help you through it. So the perpetuation of the behavior just keeps going because no one's going to challenge you. And once then people find out and do, it doesn't matter because we highlight and connect to such a level of pain that no one is actually going to take away this safety blanket from us because we're not willing.
Yeah. And
we're not willing to sit with the pain.
Yeah. And we're afraid. We're so afraid of what that pain is going to feel like, but we're not comparing to what the pain is to hold on to it.
Yes.
We don't have anything to compare it to. Do you know what I mean? But once you determine that this pain is just not manageable anymore, anything else will be better than this. Anything. And the response when I went to rehab, even the first time and much more the second time, it was, oh, thank God. Because people don't, it's not my business. It's not, and no, it's not, and I don't mean that in a confrontational kind of way, but no, it's not your responsibility to take care of my drinking. It's not anybody's responsibility to make it easier for me. It's not. And it's not easy, but it's simple. And we make it much more complex in our own mind. And the drinking, what it is because the thoughts, the trauma, we've got those intrusive thoughts that just come, and we believe we have no control over them, and we're not filtering them, and our thinking is the only thing we have control over. But the thoughts come in. It's what we do with them. All right, that's there. You're ugly. You need to go. And
Yeah.
the drinking, what was the thought was that it'll quiet it down. It'll quiet the voices. It'll make this squirrely belly that's right here feel less squirrely. Just for a nanosecond, and then all hell breaks loose.
I want to add, addiction often serves as a coping mechanism, as we've identified, to numb emotional pain, shame, or feelings of inadequacy. It naturally provides a temporary relief, but it perpetuates cycles of guilt and self-doubt. When we look at recovery, it does involve recognizing emotional triggers, confronting underlying pain, and learning healthier coping mechanisms. It's not, stop abstaining from substances and just live with it all. It's about, okay, if we're going to ask someone to abstain from substances, it's how do we then help someone redefine their identity, reclaim their self-worth, really, really reshape or even rip apart some of those really ingrained belief systems that just keep perpetuating the behavior, and give them something that they can use instead, right? When tough emotions resurface, and they will, because you're dealing with trauma, you're dealing with challenges, you're dealing with emotions that are going to be challenging and hard to deal with. You've become so intolerant to feeling those emotions because all you have done up until this point is either suppress them or numb them. So naturally, we do, when we ask someone to abstain from alcohol, we don't realize what we're actually asking that person to do. It's not just to stop drinking, it's to open up Pandora's box that the actual alcohol is containing. And that is a very scary thing for someone to face.
Yes, it is. And I love that you just said that, because it's exactly that. It's that security blanket. We take it away and then we're like, all right, have at it. And all of this stuff that you've used it to keep down is then there. And you're like, and that's that kind of that wake up moment. And especially for women, where you're like, what the hell happened? How did I get here? And what do I do now? Because when you're drinking, everything's in black and white. And then you get sober and life turns into Technicolor. Good, the bad, and the ugly. And you're like, well, I'm not made for color TV yet. I'm not prepared for this. And that is what is so very important about coaches, about whoever it is that you need to. For addiction, AA. AA is a massive support to me. It is where I know when I need to put my butt right there. And there are pieces of AA that work for me and pieces that don't. But that's the beauty of being a human being. I can pick what works for me and what doesn't. And I think we're trained to be so cookie cutter, And I think that's what really resonated me with the therapist at Betty Ford, was he was not cookie cutter. I was like, well, everything else didn't work, so I guess this might as well give it a go. I'm here. And and it is that theory that just dive right in. What else? You already know it. We're already doing the negative. The people say, well, I can't do positive self-talk. Well, you're already talking to yourself. You're doing it every day, constantly. You just need to change the tone. The tone is so important of what you say to yourself. I was just working with a client and about trying to get out of a very terrible relationship. And what's being put on her is, you're doing this, right? Mm-hmm. So now she's starting to feel like, I'm doing this. And I said, okay, let's take those, I'm doing this, these 3 words, and we'll say them 3 different ways. I'm doing this. It's like, I'm creating this mess. Or, I'm really doing this. And you're kind of half in and half out. Or, I am doing this. And I said, stand out on the lawn and do that, and you'll notice the difference in how it makes you feel. And they are the same words.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think it's that acknowledgement of, and we'll discuss, I guess, strategies in a moment, but it's that, getting to a point in your life where, like you've identified, can it get lower than this? Realizing that it's hurting so much of the people around you and it's hurting you too. You then start to then reframe of, do I want to keep living this way? And then for you, what I'm hearing is that you finally were able to be at a point where if someone told you it's your responsibility to pull yourself out, you were ready to actually do that because of the damage that it had caused. And for some individuals, and so many of my guests have especially around addictions, have said no matter how bad things got, things always got worse because a person needed to get right to the bottom of nearly having nothing and losing everything for them to actually start realizing maybe it's now time for me to actually own how I'm contributing to this.
What is my role in the chaos? What's my role in this dumpster fire? I'm not an innocent bystander, and it is something when you decide that you're going to go to rehab, when you decide that it's do or die, and that realization that I was never afraid to die, and in fact the drinking was a very distinct method of trying to kill myself very slowly. And that's a reality. I knew exactly what it was doing. And I could feel it physically. And knowing, I said, I was never afraid to die. I've never been afraid to die, but I was terrified to live. And that meant like actually feeling the living and experiencing, not just doing, because I can do real well. I can robot it like the best of them. But, and it's that realization that, okay, I'm not afraid to live anymore. And it is fear. Everything we ever wanted is on the other side of fear.
Yeah. We've identified that addiction can be a way to mask pain and shame. We know that breaking free from shame requires a really deep level of vulnerability. How did you let go of that self-judgment and embrace just radical self-acceptance and knowing that you have to do the work?
That's a really interesting question. And I got to think about that for a second, because I don't want to say it was like a Band-Aid, but it was kind of like once I said about my father out loud and owning that, because again, like we said, it was just that shame, that guilt, because we don't understand it. So that those feelings are still the same. And once I said it out loud, and that shame was then released, because I did not do that, but saying it out loud made that release. So regardless of how horrible you think you have done, or things that you feel, getting them out, because our perception, what's rolling around in our brain, 9 times out of 10 isn't real. Meaning we've crafted it and shifted it and done all sorts of mickety muck about it, and we're freaking out about something that may not even be real. So when we get it out and we get it out to somebody else and they say, oh, hold on, let's just look at that for a sec. And then it just felt better and better and better. And then I kind of took it on like a badge of glory. Like, all right, this is what I've done. And I've owned it. And the response that I get, just even from people at the hospital where I work and whatever, they're like, oh my God, you are the most real person I've ever met. And that feels good. That feels really good to hear that. And it doesn't matter. And it empowers other people to say, it's okay to own my crap. It is okay.
Mm-hmm. And what you're identifying there as well is this, but by acting in a vulnerable way and owning your story and sharing parts of your story in ways that it's helpful or to others or to self, you're actually actively breaking apart those narratives that initially led to your coping mechanism, right? The beliefs of I'm not enough, or I'm, disgusting, or, any other belief system that then created, you're actually able to acknowledge the part that you play and create then genuine connections with people that then help change those narratives that were previously perpetuated by your behavior.
Correct. I mean, when you're telling yourself these things and that shame that goes with it,
Mm-hmm.
um, it goes back to that mirror test. And the hard work that we continue to do is I look at myself every single morning and I do an inventory. I do an inventory of kind of what went on because I need to marinate with stuff overnight, double check. And that falls into the AA, 12 steps. Do your daily inventory. Keep yourself in check. And if my eyes don't keep looking, oh, that's one we need to look at. All right, let's look at it a little closer. Why did you? And just being accountable to yourself, because that's how I feel. That's how I feel good inside, and is that I know I'm being true to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, in midlife, getting to that point of I don't give an F anymore. I don't care what you think of me. I don't care, because that's what when we talk about our childhood and how we were brought up. Ooh, that was a big one. You must present
Everyone's opinions matter.
And you must, it doesn't matter how ugly it looks on the inside, you better look good on the outside. And that has honestly just screwed all of us up. Honestly, and we see it even in commercialism and all of it. Women's body issues, all of that stuff. And now women in midlife going through menopause and breaking out of the shame of that. These are natural things that we've been shamed for. And it's, when you've got so much external coming at you, it's so hard to then what you can consider turning on yourself. Like, oh, well, why are you, everything else is so horrible. Why are you going to? Now, it's so much better. And it really invites and has people gravitate towards that. And that's what I and what I enjoy is come in my boat. You ain't alone. And it's that community, and regardless of which community it is, whether it's women empowerment or stem cell transplant, rare disease, advocacy, healthcare, doesn't matter. You don't want to feel alone.
And I want to ask, because when we look at at any recovery journey from substances, especially in the context of AA, I think there's a component of forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, obtaining forgiveness from others. There's a really, really big component of that. And we are breezing through in today's episode about your journey through it. And I do want to highlight for individuals struggling with substance abuse, it's not a quick journey, and just because we're talking quickly through our episode today, we don't want to minimize the number of years it takes and the effort and things like that. But I guess I wanted to kind of, as we move into talking about what you currently do with your work, I want to kind of wrap up our discussion on substances and abuse of alcohol. What was the stages of recovery for you in helping you move into then feeling genuinely capable to help others?
So, I mean, when you're, and again, I went to rehab twice. So, round number one was I'd gotten escorted out of the hospital because I was going through withdrawal, and The positive was I wasn't drinking at work, but that's why I was shaking so bad. And I actually went to rehab. I just got in a car. I got in the car. I had them come get me the next day. I didn't tell my husband. I didn't tell my kids. I didn't do anything because it's going to be too hard on them. My husband, managing the kids, doing this, we can give ourselves 800,000 excuses. But what I wasn't acknowledging was it wasn't going to be hard for me to not be with them. It was terrifying and horrible for me to be with them. I was making their lives so much more difficult. And time number 2 was for me, was when I really was watching my body physically disintegrate. And it was a do or die drinking, die not drinking, I don't, whatever it is, but you are on this path. And I didn't want to be on it anymore. I had fought for so long. I had drank 30 years. 30 years. When we talk about this is not a quick process, it's not. And the decision, it has to come from internal. My husband's response when my son called him, he's like, Mom just handed me a bottle of vodka. He was like, yeah, all right. Like, what else was he? Everybody was at a loss. So when I decided, almost a little bit more of a badass, like, all right, I've been through all this crap. No, we're not going out this way. I am not going to let this be the end of my story. And I had a big story to tell. And I don't know if you know the song by Sarah Bareilles, The Story. And I'll send it to you. It's an interesting, but all the lines on my face say I've got a story to tell. But the stories don't mean anything if you've got no one to tell them to. And so, and it wasn't more of a, feel bad for me. Again, it's that same boat theory, in Manhattan on 9/11. So were a gajillion other people, but we never addressed it. I don't know if you remember, you're too young to remember, but when the Challenger exploded, we were in like 5th grade. And literally the box TV came in, the ship exploded, they put it out, and we went back to school. How we were like, it's wacky. So, so when 9/11 happened, it blew everybody's world up, and it was repetitive on television, and you just couldn't get away with it. And then it ended. They were done. They were done. Kind of like the Challenger. And it at least in the public eye. And it's not to say that, but there's a large portion of those of us that were in New York that kind of really never addressed it. And again, that just adds to the stuff. We're stuffing down in the Spanx. Let's push it down there. And so the book that I wrote, which is coming out on March 4th, is called The Dumpster Fire Diaries. Get Off the Hot Mess Express. And it is my story, but woven with a gajillion tactics and strategies that I used and use to get out and stay out. Because the dumpsters are going to keep coming. We cannot stop them.
Oh, completely.
But I sure as hell can teach you how to not jump in it and set it on fire yourself. And that's I think if we realign what our goals are, and the things that come from that, from not lighting it on fire, are so much more beneficial. We're just geared to be like, oh, chaos. I'm going right into it.
And thank you for sharing that. We'll talk about your book in a moment. You do help women break from self-doubt and reclaim their lives. What are some common thought patterns that women keep kind of finding themselves stuck in, and how do you help them overcome these?
I think the biggest one, and I'm a Generation X woman, which is, born between, what was it, 1980, 1970 and 1983. And we are right now severely stuck between our aging parents, our children. We were geared to believe and to achieve that we could do it all. No one ever defined what this all was. So we've just been flailing around, grabbing at every single thing that we can. And then when we're not successful at it because it's impossible to do it all, then we feel like failures. And then that shame, then that doubt, then that, and it just all becomes this. So it is that mindset. Just stop the madness. Let's look at, give yourself grace for the things you have done. Let's look at what you have survived. And recognizing that 93% of the population probably couldn't handle what you've handled. Give yourself a little grace. Don't like where it is now? Let's look at it. Let's tweak it. What is working? What isn't working? Make it a hybrid volume. Nothing is cookie cutter. It never was. But we were all jammed into this. Go to school, get married, have kids, have a career. Not happy? Shut up. where we have been taught that it's selfish to think about ourselves. It's selfish to take care of ourselves. We were put on this planet to care for everybody else. And that's not the case. And it doesn't have to be. And so I want to empower women to have that voice to say, I'm not good with that. I am good with this. Let's talk about that.
I love that. And you do have a strategy as well called the Butterfly Breakthrough Strategy, which has empowered many women in the work that you do. Can you share the key principles behind this strategy and how it facilitates transformation?
Absolutely. So the butterfly concept, and I don't know if you can, I have a tattoo that says, be a butterfly. I say to my children when they walk out the door every single day, be a butterfly. Grow, evolve, be kind, become the most beautiful version of yourself that you can be. And it's about being in that cocoon, that being completely tight and kind of inching, and that breakthrough in what you can become. But that breakthrough is that hard break. This is not a gentle, come out. And for me, it's getting to the core. So you've got your fire, and all we're trained to do is go. All that does is just spread those wildfires everywhere else. So go and get the core, which we know is ugly. It's on fire and it's going to hurt. But then it's done. Then it's done. Everything else, the dancing around, just keeps that fire going. It keeps spreading. And that hurts too. And it's how much more of that hurt do you want to tolerate? And so when we get to the core, so I do not dance around anything. And with absolute understanding and no judgment, it's calling people out for their role in their chaos. We'll get to the nitty gritty and the nasty shit. Absolutely. But right now when you're in chaos, you need that breakthrough. You need to become that beautiful version in order to manage all of that stuff. We need to be whole. We need to feel secure with ourselves. I like to say that life is not a Jerry Maguire movie where nobody's going to come and complete you. Nobody's coming to complete you.
And I love that you have this just no nonsense, no BS approach, to trying to acknowledge within yourself, but also then the woman that you work with and who you then kind of connect with. It's that we have the capacity within our own self to, to create that growth, right?
Yes.
we want to normalize that some people, if this does not resonate with you and if you do prefer a slower approach or something more gentle, naturally you are at that point in your recovery journey that is it that more of like a confrontational kind of approach, and more like the approach of like really empowering oneself. You're not there yet, and that doesn't mean that you that approach is for you, and that is absolutely okay. However, there are going to be individuals where this is going to feel like a breath of fresh air, right? Where it's actually going to feel like, oh my gosh, I actually do have something within my capacity I can do to change things for myself. Because up until this point, I didn't believe that I did. And I had just been stuck in the same perpetuating cycles and continuing to wonder why I'm suffering. And when we then enlist people with narratives or with messages that are actually going to shake that up for us, it then allows and gives us permission to go and grow. And I love the butterfly concept, because there is going to be a moment of growth, and it's going to potentially be slow and calm, and then it's going to hit, and you're going to just expand yourself into a version of yourself that you weren't previously. And I know that can be scary. That could be scary, right? So many, I know my clients are entangled in their challenges, entangled in their trauma, entangled in their substance abuse. It's part of their identity. And to rip themselves away from that, it's a very scary thing. Sometimes we feel that there's this enmeshment and also familiarity and comfort with how our traumas make us feel. And so when we then start breaking apart from that, sometimes going into the unknown is so scary. That's why we keep doing what we have been doing up until that point, you know? And so I love that
it's that's that balance of which fear is worse, which one is heavier. And until it tips, nobody can convince you that you're ready. Mm-hmm. And it is, we talk about our spidey sense, that there's oh God, it's not scientific. I'm lost on the word, but there's a connection between your fight, flight, and freeze and your belly, your gut reaction. It's real, and it's metabolic. And so when that instinct kicks in and it says to you like, I cannot do this anymore, then that's the time. And to your point, it is going to resonate with some people and it's not going to resonate with another. And that is okay. That is okay. Everybody needs to find what works for them. And it does take trial and error. Maybe you luck out right off the bat, but it's that not giving up. It's I've decided to get in the game, and it's going to take a couple of practices. It's going to take some AA. It's going to maybe take some rehab. It's definitely going to take some therapy. And we may need to rearrange them, at different times. One may have more value at a time, when I was first sober, AA was that was key. Every meeting I could go to, I just needed to surround myself with alcoholics. I needed to know that I wasn't alone. I needed to know that it was possible. And yes, you're sitting in those chairs and everyone's going, this life is more than you could ever imagine. And you're looking at them going, you are lying through your teeth. And you hate every single one of them because you think they're full of crap. But they're not. And it takes time. And it takes effort. Mm-hmm. Like I said, the things that I do and that I teach, I do every day. I've practiced. That's the whole thing. I can save people decades because I've done the research. I've done the one-on-one research and figured out what works and what doesn't. And what seems to be resonating, especially in the climate today, is people just being flat out honest.
Yeah. And in that, I want to take us to, acceptance being quite a central theme in your journey. Acceptance, honesty, just, saying it how it is. Can you explain what, I guess, radical self-acceptance means to you and how it's actually transformed your own life?
Radical acceptance means to me that I have to accept the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I have to accept the consequences of each and every one of my actions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If I'm not willing to accept the consequence, then I got to think about the action. And it gives me that radical acceptance, gives me time for pause. And that pause, pause is sacred. Pause is sacred. If you just stop for 1 second and you look and you can play the tape out real quick, and we make that choice. We're constantly making choices. That acceptance that, okay, I accept that I cannot make a choice, but that is a choice. And it just keeps kind of going around. And I just keep telling myself all of this over and over again. And the acceptance that I am a kick-ass human being. I'll accept that right along the side of all of the nonsense.
Yeah.
And all of the things that I've done. And at the end of the day, I can only hope that one list is higher than the other. Because nobody doesn't have this list. Nobody's running around without this list. So my job, my goal, make one bigger than the other. Which wolf do you feed?
And to add to that, when we look at radical self-acceptance, it's embracing all parts of yourself, like you said there, Sarah, including the messy, the part that is imperfect or that we're ashamed of, the vulnerable part even that we're just not willing to get close to. It's learning through, self-reflective practice, engaging with people who are going to help you along the journey. It's learning how to let go of that shame and judgment and understanding that your past does not determine your worth. And at first that feels so weird because we very much believe we are worthless and everything's hopeless and what's the point? So it is a journey that we go on, and it is very at times it can be really slow and gentle, because the coming to yourself is naturally going to be like sometimes a slap in the face. But I think when it comes to starting to work with learning how to be compassionate with yourself, some people need to learning a brand new language.
Absolutely.
Like learning a completely different new skill. Naturally, the shift from self-criticism, where you are so self-deprecating, to self-compassion, while it's powerful, it is going to take time, and we want to normalize that and highlight how significant it is in promoting healing, in being able to empower you to then leave parts of yourself as part of your past, and then take versions of yourself that you, or grow into versions of yourself that you actually want to be. And that is the growth process we want to normalize. I want to highlight, Sarah, that you empower Gen X women to reclaim their lives. What are some of the challenges you see this generation facing, and how do you help them navigate these challenges?
Well, I think it turns directly to that feeling of self-worth, that feeling of value, that feeling of being lost, meaning I did all these things. I did what I was supposed to do. Why do I feel this way? Why is this not enough? And it's that look at, okay, one, who did we do these things for? If you're not liking it, what do you want to do? Do you want to take action on it? Sometimes we like sitting in our bathtub filled with filth. I love it. She's comfortable, nice and warm. Put her in the hair and everything. And, so with women in the Gen X arena, we also this is going to be a big so kind of the realization that women's rights and women's role in society has never actually changed. And I think we're sitting here and our eyes are open. We're watching all of this unfold. And when you're sitting there as a woman, and now especially in the United States, when our rights are being threatened, or, we're not considered human beings. And we never really have been. And that's been global and societal. We've been owned since the beginning of time. And I think Gen X women are sitting here being like, oh, hell no. No. You fooled me once, you're not going to fool me again. And so it's that empowerment to get up. Okay, this is the dumpster that you've had rolling along with you, and you are really realizing you don't like it. Let's go. What do you want to do? And it's the awareness, the accountability, and the action.
Mm. And to add to that, I do very much know that Gen X women are often taught to stay silent and to be strong, to, not really speak up or openly about their struggles of trauma or addiction or caregiving, and now that it's coming to a head where, that that women of that generation no longer feel like they can just step in the shadows, like that they're actually, wanting to push themselves into making their voice heard and reclaiming their voice and redefining identity and actually just unapologetically, being themselves. Because again, and in different ways, and we're not here having an episode to, in any way be gender specific, but it's more so around that kind of, women of that generation, just as men of that generation, very much were taught vulnerability is weakness. You hide everything. You don't let people in. That is what strength is, and we just want to.
And that money.
Oh, completely.
That's
so I think in that generation you're seeing, I guess, that coming, the layers coming undone, and it is naturally then people are waking up, people are being curious, new generations are coming through and kind of paving the way of, no, like, I've been damaged by past generations and I want things to be different, and it's all now coming to a head, I think, of acknowledging.
So very, very valuable right now, because there's just a lot. And when you talk about addiction and you talk about this generation and what happened to us because what we were sold and all of that, and so when we made choices that we now do not feel good about or did not feel good about then, and those kinds of things, and the question was, well, why did I do that? And then now we're kind of pissed, and that's what's happening. And I think the anger is important. That's that fire for change. You got to get mad. You got to be mad at what's going on. And I'm not saying over anger and all that nonsense, but yeah, it's got to piss you off.
And that brings me, I guess, to talking about your book, The Dumpster Fire Diaries, Hot Mess Express, which I will put the link down below for those who are interested in it. It is such an intriguing title and I love it. And thank you so much already, Sarah, for sharing what inspired you to write it. What do readers, what can readers hope to take away from the book?
What they will take away is that, again, it's okay to own your stuff. It's okay to acknowledge the things that happen to us. And it's okay to say that we struggled with it. And it's okay to say what we did about it. And it's okay to say that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I kind of, put that all in there. And the vision for the book is to kind of go down into different segments because there are so many avenues that it can go. This dumpster can look like anything you want. The strategies stay the same.
And that's so great to be able to, have you be able to embrace your story for the benefit of others. And that's where, when we own our past and our struggles and our truth without the shame, and we put it out there, we then transform pain into purpose. And not only, this journey, and I'm assuming would have healed yourself, or helped you along your healing journey, it's also then inspiring others, healing others, and sharing our stories breaks our stigma. It fosters connection. It empowers others to see that change is actually possible, even from the most horrific and challenging circumstances. And I love that the book itself has you bled through it, where it's not just, oh, do this and these are the strategies, and that there's actually such a personal component of you that's bled through the chapters, and it's actually things that you did and continue to do today to ensure that you're not falling back to the things that led to further hurt and trauma for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that one of the biggest things that I want people to take away is hope.
Yeah.
We all need a little bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think it does give that this is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And again, and that feeling of not being alone. That is one of the biggest keys.
And thank you so much for sharing that message, because that, for anyone who does feel stuck in their chaos today, in their own dumpster fire, I think that's a beautiful message of hope for them to be able to connect with in what they're suffering through at the moment.
And I think it's important to understand because, high functioning professional people have the rolling dumpster fire. There's just so much going on, and it's acknowledging it. Then, all right, my brain is a mess. And when we get the stuff out and we make room for our thoughts to shift, then we can think clearly. When we're making those rash decisions, when we're impulsive, we're not thinking clearly because we're too cluttered.
Mm-hmm.
And there's too many voices going on. Sometimes I'll walk into the kitchen with my husband and I'll say like the second end of a sentence. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, I was doing the first half in my head. There's so much.
Love that.
And when we again, it's awareness, acknowledgement. I'm not crazy. I know I'm not here, But yeah, there's a lot of internal talk. And we have different versions of ourselves. So it can get very confusing and very loud in there sometimes.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, all our guests, their details will be in the description below. But what's next for you, and how can listeners connect with you?
Yep. So the book is coming out. I am building a course, a 12-week course for the Butterfly Breakthrough to incorporate both group and individual sessions along with strategies and techniques. And what I offer is more of a concierge model, because via texting, meaning, so you've got a moment, something's happening. We're not going to sit down for a 60-minute thing, but hey, Sarah, this is going on. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm like, okay, let's take 5 minutes. What did we learn? What did we talk about? Boom, boom, boom. Because that in the moment training is what makes the difference.
Yeah.
Coming Tuesday at 3 o'clock to tell me what happened Friday at 4, and it created chaos when it could have been avoided. But when you're new and you're learning these things, you need that reinforcement. You need that support, because it's very easy to go sideways.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And I love that you've identified that, because, being able to have different levels of support at different times of your recovery, or experiencing like the actual intensity in the moment. It's so great. And I love that you've got that feature as part of your the work that you do for your clients. That's amazing.
Yeah. It has made a big difference in multiple clients because again, we don't need to sit in therapy for years on end. This isn't meant to be a 3-4 year relationship. This is meant to be, whoop, let's just get you out of it. And again, to your point, that deep trauma therapy, if we're wanting to get it, that's a different story,
Oh, completely.
Coaching, right. And your mental ability to do it. We're not going to get sober and dive right in to the details of things. We got to look at your current situation, because you can't manage that deep and dark if this is a rolling dumpster fire.
And I just want to also highlight, there is sometimes one can happen prior to the other. So for some individuals, Sarah's approach, or more of a coaching in the moment approach, and doing trauma work later, is what suits you. Where other individuals might feel like, okay, I actually need to do the trauma work first before I can have someone to help me in the moment. So let that be something that resonates with you, and of course connect with support in whatever way actually feels right and helpful to where you are currently in your journey as well.
Yep. Whatever works, just do something.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, your journey from chaos to clarity and your commitment to empowering women is truly inspiring. Thank you so much for your vulnerability, wisdom, and humor in sharing your story with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome. Thank you.
And to our community, as always, thank you for tuning into another episode on the Self Reflections podcast. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below to share your thoughts. Until next time, take care and keep reflecting.